The morning Nadira Osebansu arrived at Fort Myer, the sky was the color of old concrete. Cold, flat, and offering nothing. She had one bag, one notebook, and the kind of quiet confidence that people who have never been tested often mistake for shyness. She was 31 years old. She had grown up in Alabaster, Alabama, in a house where the floors creaked in a different pitch on every step, and her mother made sure every child in that house understood two things: that hard work was not optional, and that the opinion of a fool was not worth a single second of your attention. Nadira remembered that second lesson often. She was assigned to an intelligence training unit, a group of 12 soldiers being evaluated for signals intelligence work. It was competitive, fast-paced, and overseen by Captain Marcus Hale, a man who moved through the world as though he had already decided how things were going to go before they happened. He looked at Nadira's file the way someone looks at a bill they did not expect. "You're the signals background?" he asked, not looking up. "Yes, sir," she said. He nodded slowly, in the way that means the opposite of agreement. Then he closed the folder and moved on. The training was built around speed. Decrypt a coded transmission as fast as possible. Identify the source of a signal as fast as possible. Process, analyze, and report fast. The men in the unit, most of them with 2 or 3 more years of experience than Nadira, moved through the drills like they had done them in their sleep. Some of them probably had. Nadira finished last. Not a little last. Last by a margin that made the stopwatch feel like a judgment. Captain Hale would stand at the edge of the room, arms crossed, watching her work. He never said anything directly. He did not need to. There is a specific kind of silence that men use to communicate disappointment, and he had perfected it. By the end of the second week, she had a nickname. Dead Weight. It was said quietly, in the hallway, in the break room, in the locker area. The kind of nickname that is designed to reach the person it belongs to without being said directly to their face. Nadira heard it. She absorbed it the way she absorbed most things, not with anger, not with tears, but with the stillness of someone who is storing something for later. She did not explain herself. That was her choice, and she made it deliberately. Because here is what Captain Hale's rubric did not measure, what none of the drills were designed to detect. Nadira was not slow. She was doing something extra. The training transmissions piped into the room were supposed to be simulations, dummy signals, created for the purpose of the exercise. Clean, controlled, artificial. What nobody in that room had been told, what very few people on the base even knew, was that 3 of the live monitoring systems had been accidentally patched into the training feed during a routine maintenance update 6 days before Nadira's unit arrived. The signals coming through were not all dummy signals. Some of them were real. And buried underneath one of those real signals, repeating every 47 minutes, was a second signal. A faint one. Encoded differently from the first. The kind of thing you would only notice if you were listening not just to what a signal was saying, but to the space underneath it. Nadira noticed it on day 3. She said nothing. She began documenting it instead. Every time the signal appeared, she logged the exact timestamp, the frequency pattern, the variation in encoding structure. She did this while also completing the drills, which is why she finished last. She was solving 2 problems at once, and one of them was not in the instructions. By the end of the 3rd week, she had 17 pages of handwritten notes in her green spiral notebook. She organized them into a clear, structured report. Not because anyone asked her to. Not because she believed anyone would listen. But because the information was real, and real information deserved to be put somewhere it could be found. On a Thursday evening, at 6 o'clock, she walked to the office of Colonel Raymond Briggs, the base commander, and knocked on the door. The duty officer looked up. "Can I help you, Sergeant?" "I need to leave something for the colonel," Nadira said. "It's important." She was polite about it. She was always polite. But there was something in the way she stood, steady, settled, that made the duty officer take the folder without arguing. She went back to her bunk. She did not tell anyone what she had done. She slept well, actually, which surprised her. She had expected to lie awake. Instead, she closed her eyes and the morning came quickly. Colonel Briggs read the first page of her report before his coffee finished brewing. He read the second page standing up. By the third page, he had picked up his phone. The call he made went to a man whose name Nadira would never know. That man made a call of his own, and that call went higher, and the calls kept getting shorter and moving faster up the chain the way calls do when the information inside them is urgent and the people receiving them are not yet sure exactly how urgent. By Friday afternoon, there were 3 people on the base who had not been there on Thursday. They wore no identifying insignia. They went straight to the commander's office and did not come out for 2 hours. Nadira was in the training room when this was happening, finishing last on a cipher drill. Captain Hale was mid-sentence, explaining, for the 4th time that week, that her analytical approach was too slow for operational conditions, that intelligence work demanded speed, that she needed to. The door opened. A young corporal stepped in, walked directly to Captain Hale, and handed him a folded note. The room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something unexpected happens and everyone senses, before they understand it, that the air has changed. Hale unfolded the note. He read it. He read it again. His expression was the expression of a man watching a story end differently than he had written it in his head. He looked at Nadira. She looked back at him, calm and even, the way her mother had taught her to look at people who underestimated her. The note contained 3 lines. It directed that Sergeant First Class Nadira Osei-Bonsu be removed from the training program immediately and reassigned to a unit and a role that the document did not have the clearance level to name. The reassignment had been initiated by a call from the Office of the President's National Security Staff. The call had come that morning. The anomalies she had identified were not training data. They were real. They were active. And the 17 pages she had placed on the commander's desk had identified a communication pattern that 3 separate agencies had been trying to trace for 11 months. She had found it in 3 weeks. In a training room. While finishing last. Nadira stood when Hale nodded at her. She did not smile. She did not look at the men who had called her dead weight. There was nothing she wanted from them, not an apology, not a moment of reckoning, not the satisfaction of watching their expressions shift. She had not done the work for any of that. She picked up her green notebook from the desk. She walked to the door, and then she stopped, not for drama, not to give anyone a final look, but because she had left her pen on the table. A blue pen with a chewed cap that she had carried since her first week of training. She went back for it, slipped it into her breast pocket, and left. The room behind her stayed quiet for a long time after the door closed. Nobody moved for almost a full minute. Captain Hale folded the note again, very carefully, along the same crease. He set it on the table. He looked at the remaining 11 soldiers in the room, who were all looking at him, waiting to see what he would say. He said nothing. He picked up the stopwatch and told them to get back to the drill. Nadira never returned to that base. The details of her reassignment were classified at a level that most of the people at Fort Myer would never hold. What happened next in her career is not a matter of public record, and she never spoke about it in interviews, because she never gave interviews. What she did, years later, was teach. She trained younger analysts, men and women, in the thing the rubric had never measured, how to listen to the space beneath a signal. How to hold 2 problems at once without dropping either one. How to be patient enough to find the thing that everyone else has missed. She told her students, on the first day of every training cycle, one simple thing. Finish last if you have to. Just make sure you find what nobody else was looking for. The folders she handed them, on that first day, were green. Spiral-bound. She bought them in bulk. The pen she kept in her breast pocket was still blue. The cap was still chewed. Some things you carry because they remind you of who you were before the world figured out who you are. Nadira Osei-Bonsu had been carrying hers since a cold January morning in Alabaster, Alabama, long before any training room, long before any base, long before any call from anyone whose name she was not allowed to know. She had always known what she was worth. She had simply waited for the rest of the world to catch up.